The Celestial Prosperity Institute stood as a monument to galactic cooperation, which was a polite way of saying it was where various species sent their offspring to learn that the universe was vast, strange, and filled with beings who considered different atmospheric compositions acceptable. Established some 300 cycles ago by the harmonious accord of reasonable beings, the Institute prided itself on academic excellence, cultural exchange, and maintaining gravity generators that didn't accidentally pulverize students from low-G worlds. It sprawled across an entire moon, a thoroughly dead, geologically stable moon, selected specifically because nothing on it could spontaneously explode, freeze, boil, or otherwise inconvenience the student body. Most species in the galactic community had evolved on what humans would consider paradise worlds. Gentle gravity, predictable weather patterns, fauna that rarely attempted murder as a survival strategy. The Zentarii homeworld, for instance, boasted 0.6 standard G, consistent temperatures, and predators that had gone extinct millions of years ago because honestly, chasing prey seemed like a lot of work. The Morphelians came from a water world where the most dangerous creature was a fish that occasionally splashed too enthusiastically. The Krell evolved on a planet where the weather was so mild that their word for storm translated roughly to persistent breeze. Then there was Earth. Earth, by all statistical analysis, shouldn't have produced sentient life. It should have produced increasingly creative corpses. The planet rotated at speeds that generated weather systems capable of flattening cities. Its gravity well was strong enough to trap a respectably thick atmosphere, and also strong enough to crush most visiting species into paste. The tectonic plates moved around like they had somewhere to be. The native fauna had spent millions of years in an evolutionary arms race where the primary strategy was make everything more lethal. Even the plants had weaponized themselves. The entire planet seemed locked in a perpetual state of trying to kill everything on it, and the humans had looked at this situation and declared it home. Naturally, when Earth applied for Celestial Prosperity Institute membership, there was debate. Lengthy debate. The kind of debate where people questioned whether beings from a Class 12 Deathworld could integrate with civilized society or whether they'd instinctively try to fistfight the furniture. But the humans had developed faster than light travel, demonstrated remarkable technological aptitude, and made a compelling case about diversity of perspective. Also, they'd brought something called coffee, and after one semester, half the faculty was addicted. The Institute approved a small exchange program, carefully monitored, extremely carefully monitored, which brought us to Vexthor Quilnari, who was about to make a series of decisions that would require unprecedented levels of medical intervention. Vex was Zentarii avian descended, covered in iridescent feathers that shifted from deep blue to violet depending on the light, with large golden eyes that gave him excellent vision and absolutely no common sense. His species had hollow bones, a respiratory system that worked beautifully at 0.6 G and struggled anywhere above 0.8, and a cultural tradition of elaborate courtship displays involving plumage arrangement and rhythmic calls. At 19 standard cycles, Vex was in his prime, studying xenobiology with respectable grades, and suffering from the universal condition of being an absolute idiot about crushes. The human exchange student had arrived 3 months ago. She was studying engineering, which made sense because apparently fixing things that were broken was a major human pastime, probably because everything on their planet was constantly breaking. She stood at roughly 1.7 meters, had brown skin, black hair that she kept in a practical braid, and an easy smile that Vex found alarmingly attractive. She wore the standard Institute jumpsuit like everyone else, though hers had more pockets, all filled with tools, snacks, and objects Vex couldn't identify. Her name didn't matter for this story. What mattered was that Vex had decided she was the most fascinating being he'd ever encountered, and he was going to impress her using the traditional Zentarii method of displaying physical prowess. This was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was not listening to his friends. The campus recreation facility had been designed with the galactic standard in mind, roughly 0.7 G in the main areas, with adjustable sections for species requiring different conditions. The equipment reflected the general fragility of most spacefaring species. Resistance machines that provided gentle tension, running tracks with shock-absorbent surfaces, swimming pools with adjustable density. The most extreme sport available was competitive floating, which was exactly what it sounded like. Vex had seen the human use the facility before. She had her own section specifically calibrated to Earth standard conditions, with warning signs in 6 languages essentially saying abandon all hope, ye who enter here. She'd been polite about it, explaining that she needed to maintain her conditioning because muscle atrophy was a real concern at lower gravity. Vex had nodded like he understood, while internally understanding nothing except that she was dedicated and strong and he was catastrophically infatuated. Today, she'd mentioned casually in the cafeteria that she was heading to the gym after class. Vex's brain, operating at reduced capacity due to proximity to his crush, decided this was an opportunity. His roommate, Krill, a 6-limbed hexapod with more sense than Vex deserved, immediately identified the problem. They don't mean gym like we mean gym. They mean human gym. That's different. That's very different. Remember the orientation videos. Remember the footage of human athletes. Remember questioning whether physics was real. Vex waved this off with one wing. I've been practicing. I've increased my workout routine by 15%. I can handle it. 15% of nothing is still nothing, Krill pointed out. Another friend, Zella, a gelatinous Morphelian who communicated through color changes, pulsed deep orange, which was her species' equivalent of "Are you actually this stupid or is it performance art?" Vex ignored them both. He'd been reading about human courtship. He'd found a data file titled Human Courtship Rituals, a survival guide, which should have been his first warning. The guide explained that humans valued physical capability, shared experiences, and something called sense of humor, which the translators struggled to define. Vex figured if he could match her in the gym, she'd be impressed. This logic had more holes than Zentarii bone structure, but Vex was committed. He found her at the facility entrance, wearing modified athletic clothing that showed she took this seriously. She brightened when she saw him. "Oh hey, Vex, what's up? I thought I might join you," he said, arranging his feathers in what he hoped was a casually confident display. "For the workout." She blinked. Her face did something that might have been surprise. "Really? You know it's in the Earth Standard section, right?" "Of course. I've been wanting to try more intensive training." She studied him for a moment, and Vex wondered if humans could smell fear, because he was producing it. "You sure? No offense, but the gravity alone is pretty rough if you're not used to it." "I'll be fine," Vex lied. "Okay," she said slowly. "But seriously, tell me if anything feels wrong. I don't want you getting hurt," Vex assured her with more confidence than he felt. They entered the Earth Standard section together, and immediately Vex felt the gravity increase. The transition from 0.7 g to 1.0 g hit him like walking into a wall. Suddenly his bones felt heavier, his lungs worked harder, and his cardiovascular system began questioning its life choices. The human noticed his slight stumble. "You good?" "Just adjusting," Vex managed. She smiled encouragingly, he thought, though his vision was already getting sparkly at the edges. "Okay, cool. I'll start with a light warm-up. Just do whatever feels comfortable." Light warm-up turned out to be a phrase with vastly different meanings across species. She began with something called dynamic stretching, which involved moving her limbs through ranges of motion that made Vex's joints ache sympathetically. She touched her toes, just bent completely in half like her spine was a suggestion rather than a structural component, and held it while talking to him about her engineering project. Vex attempted to replicate the movement. His beak got approximately to his knees before his body informed him that this was as far as the operation would proceed. She moved to the running track. "Just gonna do a few laps to get the blood moving," she said, and took off at what she probably considered a gentle jog. Vex followed. Within 30 seconds, his respiratory system was in full crisis mode. His heart rate spiked, his vision tunneled. The human was maintaining steady breathing and an easy pace, occasionally glancing back to make sure he was following. Vex was experiencing what his ancestors must have felt when fleeing from the extinct predators, pure cardiovascular panic. He completed 1 lap before needing to stop, wheezing, while the human finished 5 more. Through the observation window, Krill and Zella watched in fascinated horror. Zella had turned bright red, which meant she was either embarrassed or laughing. Possibly both. The human jogged back to Vex, not even winded. "How you feeling? Want some water?" Vex nodded, unable to form words. She handed him a bottle from her pile of supplies. He drank gratefully, trying to ignore how his hands trembled. "Maybe we skip the cardio and try some strength training," she suggested kindly. "You might find that easier." Narrator's note: it would not be easier. They moved to the weights section. The human selected what she called light weights dumbbells that read 15 kilograms each. She began doing bicep curls, while explaining the importance of compound movements for overall fitness. 15 kilograms was approximately Vex's entire body weight. He selected the smallest weights available in the Earth section, 5 kilograms each, and immediately regretted every decision that had led to this moment. His arms shook with effort, his hollow bones creaked ominously. The human completed 3 sets of 12 repetitions, while Vex struggled through 4 total curls, before his muscles staged a formal protest. "You're doing great," she encouraged, which was objectively false but appreciated nonetheless. They moved through several more exercises. Each one revealed new dimensions of Vex's poor planning. Squats made his legs quiver. Planks made his entire body question its structural integrity. Something called mountain climbers made Vex wonder if humans had named it that because you felt like you'd climbed a mountain afterward, or because it was training for actual mountain climbing, which humans apparently did for recreation, because of course they did. Throughout all of this, the human kept asking if he was okay. Her concern seemed genuine. She modified exercises, offered encouragement, and suggested breaks. Vex, drowning in pride and poor oxygenation, insisted he was fine. After 45 minutes that felt like several geological epochs, she clapped her hands together. "Okay. Cool down time. Want to try the climbing wall?" Vex looked where she pointed. The climbing wall was in the corner, stretching up roughly 8 meters. It was textured to resemble some kind of earth rock formation, with various handholds and footholds scattered across its surface. For humans, this was probably moderate entertainment. For Vex, it looked like a vertical nightmare. But she was smiling at him, and his brain had been oxygen deprived for 3/4 of an hour, and his pride was the only thing he had left. "Sure," he said. They approached the wall. The human efficiently strapped into a harness, demonstrating the safety systems. The setup was designed for human durability, which meant it would probably catch a falling human just fine. Whether it would catch a Zentarii without pulverizing his skeleton was an untested hypothesis that Vex was about to explore. She scaled the wall with casual competence, moving smoothly from hold to hold, her muscles working efficiently in the 1G environment they were designed for. She reached the top, tapped the marker, and descended in a controlled fall, trusting the automatic belay system. "Your turn," she said, breathing only slightly heavier. Vex strapped into the harness, with shaking hands. He approached the wall. Up close, the handholds looked smaller and farther apart. He gripped the first holds and pulled himself up. Immediately, his arms screamed, his hollow bones creaked. His respiratory system filed a formal complaint with his brain, which was too oxygen-deprived to respond. But he was committed now. The human was watching. His friends were watching through the window, probably recording this for posterity and blackmail. He climbed. Surprisingly, he made progress. His lightweight body was actually an advantage here, less mass to haul upward. His Zentarii ancestors had been arboreal before evolving toward ground-dwelling, and some instinct kicked in. Hand over hand, foot over foot, he ascended. 3 meters, 4 meters, 5. The human called encouragement from below. "You're doing amazing, Vex." He reached for the next hold. His fingers closed around it. He pulled up, and his strength gave out. It wasn't dramatic. There was no grand moment of realization. His muscles simply stopped functioning. His grip failed. And Vex fell. The safety system engaged instantly, as designed, The belay harness caught him, as designed. The shock absorption activated, as designed. The problem was that all these systems were designed for human bodies, dense, compact, durable. Vex's body was a hollow-boned avian structure optimized for low gravity. The harness caught him perfectly, but the deceleration force that would have been uncomfortable for a human translated to catastrophic for Zentarii physiology. He heard the cracks before he felt them. 3 distinct snapping sounds, like someone stepping on dry twigs. Then the pain arrived, bright and all-consuming. The human was there immediately, helping lower him the rest of the way down with the belay controls. Oh stars, oh no, are you okay? Don't move, I'm calling medical. Vex tried to respond. He attempted to say he was fine, that this was merely a temporary setback, that dignity could be salvaged from this situation. What came out was a wheezing chirp of agony. Through the observation window, Krill had already activated the emergency medical beacon. The campus medical response team arrived within 3 minutes. Hexapod medics trained in multi-species emergency care. They assessed the situation with professional efficiency, loaded Vex onto a specialized stretcher that adjusted for his physiology, and transported him to the medical center while one medic peppered the human with questions about what happened. We were just climbing, she kept saying, clearly distressed. He said he was fine. I asked so many times if he was okay. The medical center was a gleaming facility equipped to handle the diverse biology of the student body. Zentarii were a common species at the institute, so the staff knew their anatomy well. What they didn't know was how to handle the specific injury pattern Vex presented. The chief physician, a hexapod named Dr. Threll, examined the scans with increasing bewilderment. You fractured your left radius, cracked 2 ribs, and somehow compressed a vertebra. These injuries don't make sense. Our gymnasium equipment is specifically calibrated to prevent this type of damage. Vex, lying in a medical pod filled with supportive gel that kept his bones immobilized, said nothing, partially because speaking hurt, partially because he was drowning in embarrassment that was somehow more painful than the broken bones. We're going to need to review the security footage, Dr. Threll continued. This injury pattern suggests either equipment malfunction or, he paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing, or you were attempting something well beyond your physiological limits. Another medic entered, datapad in hand. Doctor, I've reviewed the footage. And he was in the Earth Standard section, full 1G. He attempted their exercise routine and then tried the human-rated climbing wall. Silence fell across the medical bay. Every staff member stopped what they were doing. Dr. Threll's 6 eyes all focused on Vex simultaneously. You did what? Before Vex could formulate a response, the human arrived, still in her workout clothes, carrying Vex's bag that he'd left behind. She looked genuinely worried. Is he going to be okay? Dr. Threll turned to her. Can you explain what happened? She recounted the entire session, emphasizing repeatedly how she'd asked if he was okay, how she'd suggested lighter exercises, how she'd warned him about the gravity difference. I swear, I wasn't trying to hurt him. He said he wanted to work out together. I didn't realize. She trailed off, looking miserable. I should have realized humans are just way more durable. I'm so sorry, Vex. You have nothing to apologize for, Dr. Threll said firmly. Then, to Vex you, however, have significant explaining to do. By this point, a small crowd had gathered. Other medical staff, curious students, and eventually, campus administration. The director of student safety arrived, a stern Krell named Administrator Ven, who took gym accidents very seriously. I need to understand the sequence of events, Ven said, activating a holographic display of the security footage. Walk me through this. They watched in collective horror as the footage played. Vex stumbling in the increased gravity. Vex struggling through exercises designed for a species that evolved in higher G. Vex climbing the wall, with visible trembling. The fall. The sickening cracks picked up on audio sensors. Ven paused the footage. Did you force him to participate in this? No, the human said immediately. I asked if he was sure. Multiple times. The footage confirmed this. Multiple instances of her checking in, offering breaks, suggesting alternatives, and multiple instances of Vex insisting he was fine. Why? Ven asked Vex directly. Would you do this? Vex remained silent. There was no non-humiliating answer to this question. Krill chose this moment to arrive, along with Zella and several other friends. Krill, demonstrating why they were the smart one, immediately identified the core issue. He was trying to impress her. Another silence, this one mixed with comprehension and second-hand embarrassment. The human's eyes went wide. Wait, what? You were trying to. She looked at Vex. You could have just asked me to get coffee. This statement somehow made everything worse. Vex wished the medical pod would transform into an escape pod and launch him into space. Dr. Threll pinched the bridge of his sensory ridge, a gesture of exasperation universal among medical professionals. So this was not hazing, not assault, not equipment malfunction, but voluntary self-destruction in pursuit of romantic attention. When you put it that way, it sounds bad, Vex managed weakly. Because it is bad, Dr. Threll snapped. You could have done permanent damage. Zentarii bones don't heal like human bones. You're looking at 6 weeks in regeneration therapy, and that's if we're lucky. Administrator Ven was reviewing additional data. The human section has warning signs, multiple languages, clear indicators of danger. You acknowledged these when you entered. He looked at the human. Did you understand the risks you were taking? She shook her head slowly. On Earth, this is just normal exercise. I legitimately didn't realize how dangerous it would be for other species. I mean, I knew intellectually that we're from a high-gravity world. But, she gestured helplessly. This is my light recovery day workout. I wasn't even trying hard. This statement sent a ripple of horror through the assembled crowd. Recovery day? Dr. Threll repeated. Yeah, I do serious training tomorrow. I'm preparing for a marathon back home. Nobody asked what a marathon was. Someone pulled up the information on a datapad. The color drained from several faces. Species without faces managed to convey equivalent alarm. You run, Ven said slowly, 42 kilometers, voluntarily. Well yeah, it's fun. Fun, multiple voices echoed in disbelief. The human seemed to realize she wasn't helping. Look, I'm really sorry. I should have been more careful. I should have stopped him. I should have realized. You did everything correctly. Dr. Threll interrupted. You checked for consent, offered modifications, monitored his condition. The fault lies entirely with he gestured at Vex Romeo here and his spectacularly poor judgment. Several students had pulled up Earth athletic records on their personal devices. Information was being shared in hushed, horrified whispers. They climb mountains for recreation. The Mordelians looked nauseated, which was impressive since they didn't have stomachs in the traditional sense. Some of them jump out of aircraft, intentionally, with fabric parachutes, for fun. There's a sport where they throw themselves down snowy mountains on wooden planks. They have a competition called Ironman that combines swimming, cycling, and running, and some of them complete it in under 8 hours. They box. They intentionally hit each other until someone falls unconscious, and they call it sport. The information cascade was causing a minor existential crisis among the student body. Administrator Ven made a decision. Effective immediately, we're implementing new protocols. Human exercise areas will require species verification before entry. We'll install additional monitoring, and we'll be adding a mandatory seminar to orientation about the dangers of attempting to match human physical capabilities. The human looked apologetic. I really didn't mean to cause problems. You haven't, Ven assured her. You're following appropriate safety protocols. The problem is that students like Vex here don't understand that humans are essentially walking weapons platforms. We prefer to think of ourselves as explorers, the human said with a slight smile. You explore planets that would kill most of us in minutes, Dr. Threll pointed out. Your species' idea of habitable is our idea of creative execution methods. Over the next several days, Vex remained in the medical center, encased in regeneration gel that encouraged bone growth and cellular repair. The breaks were clean, fortunately, and Zentarii healing technology was advanced. He'd make a full recovery, though his pride would take substantially longer to heal. His friends visited regularly, as friends do, which meant they mocked him mercilessly. "I have the footage saved in 17 different formats," Krill announced cheerfully. "I'm planning a presentation for xenobiology class about physiological limitations and catastrophic decision-making." Zella pulsed through various colors that translated to approximately "I'm laughing at you," while also being deeply concerned about your judgment. The human visited too, bringing something called a banana, which she explained was high in potassium and good for muscle recovery. Vex accepted it, though his beak wasn't designed for banana consumption, and the whole experience was awkward. They actually talked, without the pressure of Vex trying to impress her through feats of physical capability. She explained that on Earth, shared suffering was actually how many friendships formed. Humans bonded through challenging experiences. Sports teams, military units, workout groups, they built connections by struggling through difficult things together. "I thought you knew what you were getting into," she admitted. "I thought maybe Zentarii were just more resilient than I realized. When you kept saying you were fine, I believed you." "That's on me," Vex said. "I was." His translators struggled with the Zentarii term for idiotically prideful in the face of obvious danger. "I was trying to impress you. I got that part eventually," she said with a small smile. "Here's the thing though, I'm already impressed. You study xenobiology. You're learning 3 different alien languages. You helped me fix my quarters air recycler when maintenance was backed up. That's impressive. Hurting yourself isn't. You're not angry?" "Vex, I'm from a world where people regularly injure themselves doing stupid things to impress other people. It's like a cultural tradition. I once watched my brother break his collarbone trying to do a backflip at a party." She shook her head fondly. "I'm not angry. I'm just glad you're okay. And I'm sorry I didn't realize how dangerous my routine would be for you." They made plans for after his recovery, something low impact. She suggested a game called chess, which was apparently competitive sitting and thinking, perfect Zentarii-appropriate activity. The campus adjusted to the new protocols. Signs went up throughout the recreation facility. "Warning: human exercise zones operate at lethal parameters for most species. Enter at your own risk." The mandatory orientation seminar was introduced. A full hour dedicated to explaining human durability, complete with footage of human athletes, soldiers, and various extreme sports practitioners. The presentation ended with a simple message: do not attempt to match human physical capabilities. You will lose, possibly permanently. Vex attended from his medical pod via holographic link, serving as a cautionary tale. The other students stared at him with a mixture of sympathy and judgment. 6 weeks later, Vex was cleared for normal activity with strict instructions to stay out of human exercise zones for the foreseeable future. His bones had healed completely, reinforced with mineral supplements that would help prevent future fractures. His pride remained somewhat fractured, but manageable. He met the human at the campus cafe. She'd prepared a chessboard, explaining the rules with patience. The game was complex, requiring strategy and forward planning, playing to both species' intellectual strengths rather than physical capabilities. They played for 2 hours. Vex won the first game. She won the second and third. They were evenly matched, which felt infinitely better than the gymnasium disaster. As they were packing up, she mentioned casually, "By the way, I started training for that marathon I mentioned." Vex had done research, extensive research. He knew exactly what a marathon entailed. "How far do you run now?" "Today I did 30 kilometers, she said, like this was a normal sentence, building up the distance gradually. "Should be ready for the full 42 by next month." Vex processed this information. "You ran 30 kilometers. Today, and yesterday." Yesterday was weight training. Heavy day, not like what we did in the gym that time. Vex remembered what she'd called a light workout. He decided he didn't want to know what a heavy day entailed. "Do you ever just sit?" "All the time," she laughed. "I'm sitting right now, this is nice," and she was right, it was nice. Sitting together, playing games that didn't require risking one's skeletal structure, talking about classes and projects and the bizarre quirks of different species. Later, Walking back to the dormitories through the campus gardens under the carefully regulated dome lighting, Vex reflected on the experience. He'd learned several valuable lessons. First, that human capabilities were so far beyond galactic standard that attempting to match them was essentially creative suicide. Second, that impressing someone through shared interests and genuine connection was vastly superior to impressing them through self-destruction. Third, that humans had weaponized the concept of exercise to a degree that most species would consider a war crime. But he'd also learned that humans could be kind, patient, and genuinely interested in other species once you stopped trying to prove something. That they valued intelligence and humor and conversation as much as physical prowess. That their legendary durability came with a surprising gentleness when dealing with more fragile beings. The human walked beside him, talking animatedly about her engineering project, something involving improved efficiency in gravity generators. Vex listened, occasionally contributing observations from his xenobiology studies. It was comfortable, easy, natural. His datapad chirped with a message from Krill, still planning the presentation for xenobiology. Working title is Pride Goeth Before the Fall. Literally. Want to contribute your perspective? I'll cut you in on the grade. Vex sent back a rude gesture emoji that translated across most species communication systems. The human noticed his expression. Everything okay? Just friends being friends, Vex said. She grinned. That's good. Friends are important, especially friends who don't let you do catastrophically stupid things. You literally watched me do a catastrophically stupid thing. I tried to stop you multiple times, she pointed out. You're very stubborn. Is that a Zentari trait? No, Vex admitted. That's a me trait. They reached the split, where the dormitories divided by species' environmental needs. Zentari habitats maintained at their preferred atmosphere and temperature. Human habitats at conditions that would cook most residents. They paused. At the junction. Same time next week? Chess rematch? The human asked. Definitely, Vex agreed. Maybe we could try that coffee thing you mentioned too. Her face lit up. You're going to love coffee. Or hate it. It's kind of divisive. Fair warning. It's also mildly toxic to some species, so we should check with medical first. Of course it is, Vex said, amused despite himself. She waved goodbye and headed toward her dormitory. Vex watched her go, then turned toward his own habitat, where Krill was undoubtedly waiting to mock him further. Across campus, in the administrative offices, a new policy was being finalized. All exchange students from classified Deathworlds would be required to provide detailed safety briefings about their native capabilities. Cultural exchange was valuable, but not at the cost of students accidentally killing themselves, trying to keep up with beings who evolved in environments that would be classified as hostile survival scenarios for everyone else. In the medical center, Dr. Threll was writing up the incident report for the Galactic Medical Database. The case study would be titled Comparative Analysis of Cross-Species Exercise Tolerance, or Why You Should Never Try to Impress a Human Through Physical Feats. It would become required reading in xenomedicine programs across the galaxy. The security footage of Vex's ill-fated workout became legendary among the student body. Not in a mocking way, though there was certainly some mockery, but as a reminder of the vast differences between species. Humans weren't better or worse, just different. Catastrophically, hilariously, sometimes terrifyingly different. And somewhere in the faculty lounge, a group of professors were having an animated discussion about human psychology, specifically their tendency to bond through shared hardship. One professor, a Krell specialist in comparative sociology, was presenting a theory that this trait explained their rapid technological advancement if you treated every challenge as an opportunity for group bonding rather than something to avoid, you'd develop solutions much faster. Another professor, Morphellian, argued that it was simply evolutionary pressure from living on a planet where everything tried to kill you. When death is a constant companion, you either develop a sense of humor about it or go insane. Both theories had merit. Both were probably partially correct. The truth, as with most things in the galaxy, was complex and beautiful and occasionally absurd. Vex returned to his quarters, where Krill immediately began the interrogation. So, how was chess? Good, Vex said. Really good, actually. And you didn't try anything stupid? I moved pieces on a board according to predetermined rules. The stupidity potential was minimal. Zella, who had been dormant in the corner of the room, pulsed bright green satisfaction and approval. Did you apologize properly? Krill pressed. I apologized multiple times during recovery. She was very understanding. We're friends now. Actual friends, built on conversation and mutual interests rather than me making a fool of myself. Character growth, Krill observed. I'm proud. Still making the presentation, though. The semester continued. Vex and the human hung out regularly, developing a genuine friendship. She taught him chess strategies and explained human cultural peculiarities. He shared Zentarii poetry and helped her understand the social dynamics of various species on campus. They studied together, complained about difficult professors together, and discovered a shared love of terrible science fiction holodramas from various species entertainment industries. Vex never set foot in the human exercise zone again. He stuck to Zentarii-appropriate activities, which his skeleton appreciated immensely. The human continued her training, eventually completing a marathon back on Earth during a break. She returned with a medal and photos of her running through something called San Francisco, which appeared to be a human city built on terrain that most species would classify as an architectural impossibility. Vex congratulated her, while privately thanking the universe that he'd never have to visit Earth personally. 3 months after the incident, Vex was walking through campus when he overheard a conversation between 2 first-year students, a Krell and a hexapod, both looking at a human student doing pull-ups in the distance. I bet I could do that, the Krell said. Don't? Vex called over. Seriously. Don't? They looked at him questioningly. Vex pulled up the infamous security footage on his datapad, now immortalized in campus legend. He showed them the relevant highlights. That's you? The hexapod asked, horrified. That's me, Vex confirmed. Being an idiot. Learn from my mistakes. Admire from a distance. Find literally any other way to connect with people. Do not attempt to match human physical capabilities. The 2 students nodded vigorously, backing away from the pull-up bars. Vex walked on, satisfied that perhaps his catastrophic lapse in judgment could serve some greater purpose by preventing others from making similar mistakes. In the distance, the human finished her pull-up set, dropped to the ground, and waved when she spotted him. He waved back, his properly healed wing moving exactly as it should, grateful for modern medicine, patient friends, and the hard-learned lesson that sometimes the best way to impress someone is to not actively try to impress them at all. The galaxy was vast and strange, and filled with beings of wildly different capabilities. Understanding those differences, respecting them, and building connections across them, that was the real challenge. Far more difficult than any workout, and infinitely more rewarding, though significantly less likely to result in hospitalization, which was definitely a point in its favor.